Official Wrestling presents Marking Out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second ever episode of Marking Out, courtesy of Official Wrestling. My name's Kieran, and my guest at this time is someone who pretty much got me my start in professional wrestling. Was my first ever trainer, and that man is the general manager and sole proprietor of Infinite Promotions, Ciarán McConnell. Hello, how are you?
The general manager. The number of times I have had rows with people over this. This is not a hotel group. Not the general manager.
The GM? Anything. I thought that was a general thing. No, if that's not a thing, I need to take that off the website.
What, a general manager. This comes from Vince McMahon appointing Eric Bischoff and Stephanie McMahon years ago. Now, if you're not the owner of a company, apparently you're the general manager, which it's never sat right with me at all. What I am is the promoter.
There we go.
The matchmaker. The sole proprietor, which I like.
That was your own words.
It was my own words, yeah, that's why I would like it. Of Infinite Promotions.
What I'm going to get you to do is what I get getting everyone to do at the start of their interview, which is sort of like an icebreaker. So when you go to a big WWE event, they'll have a tour program.
Yeah.
And in that tour program, they'll have all the pictures of all the wrestlers on show, and in the top corner, they tend to have the personal bio for the wrestler. So what I would like for you to give us right now is your ring name, any ring nicknames that you would have had, your hometown, and your finisher.
My wrestling name is Ciarán McConnell because I am really imaginative. Because I've just everything I do, I am me in, or some version or variation of me. Over the years, I've been. I started out as Celtic Thunder, which I ripped from an Irish male vocal harmony group. Because I was doing the Irish thing, because that's obviously my heritage. And then I'm probably most known by a good half a dozen people in the country as the classic Ciarán McConnell, which is my ring name. And the other criteria were
your hometown.
My hometown is St Helens. That's where I'm from.
Height,
6'3",
and your wrestling finisher.
The wrestling finisher, either the figure 4 leg lock or the DDT.
DDT, very classic.
Yes,
absolutely classic. So this is something that I actually don't. Something that I actually don't know very much about is your start up in wrestling. Because obviously I met you when you were transitioning, or when you were mostly towards the tail end of your wrestling bits. But you mostly now is just in the trainer and promoter side of things.
Yeah. So
it's the question is what were your how did you get your start in pro wrestling? Where did it all begin?
So my first. Let's backtrack a bit because it's a little bit not as clear cut as the day I first walked into training. My first ever experience of wrestling in the UK was up the road at the Theatre Royal in St Helens. I believe it was a show Ian McGregor put on when I was in year 7, so I would have been 11 years old. I had been a fan of wrestling since I was 7.5. But I didn't know anything about wrestling in this country, and it was a big American spectacular featuring the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin and
in St Helens,
Mick Foley.
My words.
Yeah, Mankind, the Dudley Boy. Just the one of them. Bubba Ray, I think he was supposed to be.
Couldn't afford the one.
The fella that wrestled as Mankind wrestled twice. I did the same entrance both times and went back past my seat every time because I was before the first horizontal aisle in the Theatre Royal, if anyone's ever been. And the guy walked past me first as himself, presumably, and then next as Mankind, but it was the same bloke. Which was really interesting. And I didn't go to the Theatre Royal at 11 years of age expecting to see the real Stone Cold Steve Austin, because if I had done, I'd be wondering how Stone Cold Steve Austin had suddenly morphed into Tank Abbott, because that was what he looked like. Every match in the first half took place in a cage because, as I later learned as a promoter, they're an absolute pain in the backside to take down. So Scotty 2 Hottie versus Kurt Angle in a cage match.
Wow.
He did the moonsault off the cage and everything.
Blimey.
Kurt, not Scotty.
Yeah.
And that was my kind of first experience of wrestling in this country. Fast forward 4 years, 3-4 years, and I'm doing work experience. Then at my mother's work, which is a doctor's surgery in a place called Pemberton. And whilst I'm very fervent on confidentiality, so I won't say too much, a bloke walked in to book an appointment in a t-shirt that said the Nitro Pro Wrestling Alliance. And as kind of a 14, 15-year-old lad, kind of bored on a reception desk at a doctor's surgery on his second day work experience, this was possibly one of the most exciting things that had happened to me up until that point. Probably second to realising I'd hit puberty, and which I won't go into. But yeah,
sure,
it's call 0898. So
yeah,
so I saw this guy in this t-shirt, and I was like, the Nitro Pro, I don't know what that is. Let's ask Jeeves, because Google didn't have quite as big a market share at the time.
Let's ask Jeeves.
So I asked Jeeves, and he told me that I was always an Ask Jeeves over Google purely because I love the idea of a butler. I like the advert. The butler is finding this information out for me at once. So yeah, I asked Jeeves, and it's not Ask Jeeves anymore, it's just Ask now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I ramble. You're riveted by that. You've got to really
I'm so disappointed.
You've got to really sound interested in everything your guest is saying. Yeah, sorry, I ramble.
No, that is quite disappointed.
Loads.
So while we've taken a lull, I'd like to take this moment to apologise for any background noise clicking you may hear. The gym is where we are currently recording is adjacent to a squash club. Yeah. So that's what that mysterious ticking noise might be.
That is what we've got very loud clocks.
Snakes.
So I, as I say, I asked Jeeves what the Nitro Pro Wrestling Alliance was, and discovered that this was an old firm based in Wigan, sort of around the area that I was doing my work experience in at the time, and so I thought, wow, and they did, I was like, I wonder if they teach people, because I'd seen the Wrestling Channel previously, and there was an advert, I think when I was 12, for the old FWA Academy in Moss Side, but they wouldn't take anyone until they were 14, so I didn't go there. How different my experience in wrestling would have been if they had have taken 12-year-olds, and how different my views on the business in general may have been if I'd taken that step. So I'm actually quite glad that I didn't. No disrespect to any of the trainers there. It's just personal preferences as they are with wrestling. I probably wouldn't have gelled well with some of the people that were faces there at the time, particularly not when you look at what they're doing now. But I went. So anyway, I was doing the work experience. Google asked Jeeves. I did ask Jeeves now, and we'll get past this eventually.
Better times of asking Jeeves now.
Yeah. I sacked him in the end. It's no wonder he's not anymore. And I was looking around, wondered if they did training, and but saw like some of the videos of the stuff that was there, and wasn't. I was petrified really. I saw a suplex off the top rope, I think from a guy. I don't think he's with us anymore. I never met a guy called Brick Wall, who was friends with a few people. That he was a friend of someone that was some of the lads that I know through the job, and he's very sadly missed. But seeing those videos, I didn't really want to. You weren't go there.
What age was that?
That was about 14, 15.
Yeah.
But then off the bat, I kept that on. I kept checking on that for the next year or so. And one of the things that they were doing at the time was like a cross promotion angle with the RWA, the Runcorn Wrestling Academy.
Right.
And again, wasn't. I was as extrovert as I was as a child with performance and all that sort of stuff. I'd steered clear of trouble. I'd never had a ruck or a knock or anything. You know what I mean? And so I was, easily put off by physical instruction. And I used to wrestle like with my mates as a kid. But to be honest, I always wanted really to be. I used to pop biggest for like when Commissioner Michaels or Vince or Linda McMahon would come out. So something in me from a very early age wanted to be a promoter.
Yeah.
Right.
Higher power.
It's me.
I was a wrong choice of words. Yeah, I get what you mean.
And so I put it to the back of my mind again, and then there was a documentary on the Runcorn Wrestling Academy on I think it was the Look North programme on BBC Northwest. Yeah. And I was a little bit older, and I was about 17. I was 17, and more importantly, my mother was out of the country because obviously, even though she'd been telling me she'd been trying to kill the job for me for years, the thought of me actually getting involved in it was not something that she wanted to do. So I waited till she was off on holiday and asked my auntie, who worked in Runcorn at the time and knew it better than I did, to take me along to a session. And I arrived an hour and a half early for the session, and the first people I saw waiting outside the building for the place to open was the infamous DJ King, as many of you know him, my friend Mike, and his tag team partner at the time, Brian B. So I started chatting with them. It turned out Brian was running the MySpace page. That's how long we were talking now at the time. So he'd seen my message that I'd sent about starting up, and we had a bit of a chat. Broke the ice. I think we were talking about. Trying to think now whether this was before 2K, so it would have been something like SmackDown versus Raw or something or other. And yeah, that's how I kind of got started. Did very little my first few sessions, and then finally kind of got into the swing of things. Showed probably a little bit more of a little. I was probably better at the character side of things early doors than the physical side of things, because I was a big kid. When I was 17, I was 17 stone. Right. And a bad 17 stone, do you know what I mean? I once asked I think I asked a girl out when I was 15, and she told me that I looked like Paddy the Vet of Emmerdale.
I don't know who that is.
So, no, some people will be guffawing at that reference now.
I'll go and Google it. I will Google it and I'll put it up on screen right now.
Picture, yeah. That was, thank you, Katie. That was her name. That was when I was 15, yeah. So I wasn't in wrestling shape. I don't know. I'm better now, but I'm still not, in the right sort of shape. But yeah, that's how I started. Started at Runcorn. Yeah.
So what was so how many years after that did you then wrestle until you've now kind of come to I wouldn't exactly say you've retired from wrestling, but
it's not my job.
It's not what you focus on anymore. So up until then, till about what point did you sort of unofficially stop wrestling?
Oh well, I've probably not. I've not worked a match now. 2.5 years. Yeah, maybe. I think my last job was for All Star on the camps. Yeah. And before that, it was sporadic, because I was always very wary of I don't want to put myself out there when I'm not ready, because I think that you burn bridges. Yep. So I didn't get an awful lot of work because I wasn't prepared to kind of put myself out there for the risk of losing. People getting a first impression of me that wasn't what it should be. Yeah. Because obviously, whilst I got myself into fairly decent nick in comparison to what I'd been before. Yeah. I wasn't anywhere near kind of where I should be. Do you know what I mean? So and that's you only get one chance to make a good first impression. So I wasn't as keen to put myself out there and do this, that, and the other, which may have been folly on my part, or idealism on my part, but when I teach the lads now, whilst when they leave the building, they are free to live their lives as they please. I always say to them, make sure you're ready before you put yourself out there, because the last thing you want for your career is to be seen before you're at the standard you need to be to start making. And I think that's kind of. Some of our lads are on, the third or fourth job now, around the place,
Yeah.
and are performing better than other lads that have had 50, 60 jobs.
Yeah.
That you'll see in my view, but obviously I will always be ever so slightly biased because they're my lads and a few ladies, but that's important that you don't, and it's a system. I took that from Johnny Brannigan at GPW because he said the quickest he ever had anyone go from starting training to debuting was 9 months. That was the quickest, and that was unheard of. And whilst Johnny and I will have entirely different philosophies on wrestling, I took from him this notion that wait till you're ready. Yeah, and I think I think that works better for people. It certainly rings truer with me than the alternative. Now I started training in I think November and had my first bit of a match the following February. So when you take into consideration training once a week for about 2 months with a Christmas break, I wasn't ready to go out there. I didn't know this at the time, and if you could have your time again, if I could have my time, I wouldn't change anything that's gone on. Certainly, if I were to change things that have gone on in my time of professional wrestling, it wouldn't be that. But you can't go back. But if someone was to come to me and say, should I do it now or should I wait till I'm ready? Obviously, I would say wait till you're ready.
Wait till you're ready.
Yeah.
So that's the start of thing. When did you get the idea to start Infinite Promotions? This is something else I don't think I've ever asked you, because I know I joined.
This is the Louis Theroux
because I didn't
researching an interview.
I know, right? I joined Infinite Promotions in May of 2014.
Okay, so 2 years at that point.
So I barely knew anything prior to that about I didn't really do any much more research into the company before I joined. So what were the early years of Infinite like at that point? What were the aims? What was goal? Just what was happening? How did it start to begin with?
It started certain bits skewed. My head's been a roller coaster these last 5 years. Basically, through training and what have you, I had developed what I saw as a good friendship with Zach Gibson, who obviously everyone listening to this will know. And we had both been interested in promoting, and so we'd had this conversation because we'd start after we left Runcorn. He became a trainer at a place that didn't last very long in Crewe called GB Pro, and I was at University of Bangor in North Wales, so it was a straight 2-hour train journey from Bangor to Crewe, and there was maybe 6 of us at max at every session, and we'd just go through things in a very small room. But we, off the back of that, we struck up a fairly decent friendship. And he'd wanted to promote in his hometown, and I'd wanted to promote in St Helens, my hometown. And so we had the idea of each of us promoting in our areas, but helping one another out.
Right.
That was the original idea. As things do, bearing in mind I was also coming up to only have to do half a year of university because I'd failed a module in my second year of uni and only had to repeat that one module. So and that was only being taught in the first half of the year. So once January came around, I was free as a bird. It's January 2012, I was free as a bird. I know that Jack had looked at Muggle Town Hall, I think, and they weren't interested. And so he said, well, why don't we look at doing something in Liverpool together? And again, originally small fry, I think we looked at the Unity Theatre, which I'd done stand-up in. We looked around a few, maybe something on the John Moore's campus or something like that. Sort of. And I remember we were feeling quite deflated this one day because we'd been around all kinds of places in Liverpool and made inquiries, and we were just being given form after form, 13 pages of rules and regs, which when you, like I say, we're talking 5.5 years ago now, so when you're 21, 22 respectively, or 20, 21 respectively, whatever we were, you kind of, you're like, and I don't know if that was audible. I heaved a sigh there on the tape for the benefits of the tape. We decided we were pretty deflated, and then we were walking along Renshaw Street, and I just happened to catch a glimpse of a mixed martial arts poster in the window to my right, and we were like, well, if it's big enough for that, it'll be big enough for wrestling. So we had a little look, and we were like, where is this? This is Renshaw Street, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay, it says it's Renshaw Street. We were like, is it this? Is it here? And this was what is, I think, colloquially known as Quiggins.
Yes.
At Grand Central.
Yes.
So we went in there and we were like, this is full of independent shops.
Yeah, this
where there's
isn't
a cage going in here, and someone said, we took a look upstairs, kind of peered through the door, and just saw this amazing
what a room
auditorium, and kind of went, I didn't know this was it. So we went in and we spoke to the lady who I'd later learned was Jenny, and she said, we said, we're looking at putting on a wrestling show, who do we speak to? And she said, the fella downstairs in the bar, who's a partner Sean. And again, after hours of going around and going, we'd like to put a wrestling show on, we'd like to, and being handed pages and pages of regulation, we went to Sean and we said, we want to put a wrestling show, and he went, great, when?
Brilliant.
So at 20 or 21 years old,
yeah, that's the
you're
age,
like,
isn't it?
Yeah, and then all things started kicking into gear. That was probably around January 2012.
Yeah.
Maybe the December before, but I think predominantly, I am right. I think thinking that it was January. We then Zach. If I say Zach or Jack, it's the same guy. Jack had graduated previously from Liverpool John Moore's University, and that got us onto a course through their business school. So we actually went, contrary to what many people will believe, we actually did go on a business course before.
It's good to know.
And we went through all that kind of stuff, and we had big ideas and what have you. But that's kind of where Infinite started up from. We wanted the initial noble promise, to use business jargon, or the noble aim was to pay better, because at the time, this was before the current boom period, so just before, but very definitely before. And I think he was at a stage in his career where he was doing a lot but not getting paid a lot for it, and so were a lot of other lads are not getting paid regularly enough, to be able to make a living out of it. There's very few lads being able to make a living out. So that was a noble aim. We also had the aim of because we'd both become fans of the Mount Evans style. I think of it its proper name, not the old British style or the World of Sport style, the Mount Evans style. We wanted to kind of modernise that, because my belief, and he would probably be of a similar belief at the time, but the way I always explain it is that basically, and this may come up later on if you were to ask me anything about the job, but so I'll do it as succinctly as possible now. Basically, because Americans speak English, when their product was able to kind of culturally colonise the UK, because satellite, BSP and Sky came in just as Greg Dyke made the utterly ludicrous decision to take wrestling off television and basically replaced it in the consciousness of wrestling fans in the UK.
Yeah.
And whereas whilst WWE is a global product and has gone from
Strength to strength.
if anyone has any gripes about Linda McMahon being small business advisor or small business administrator, she took a regional promotions company and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate.
Absolutely.
So she's suited, probably the most suited person in the cabinet level in the United States. That's
a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah, that's a different podcast. Whilst WWE is global, Mexico and the South America have retained their cultural identity in wrestling, but modernised. In Japan, the Far East in general, they have retained their cultural identity but modernised. In Puerto Rico, all the other places where Canada, they've maintained their cultural identity but modernised because of the language, and the awareness because of the television situation. My belief is that British wrestling was essentially culturally appropriated by
the WWF.
The WWF. By American wrestling in general. And I grew up watching Stone Cold Steve Austin beat people up, drinking beer, fighting in the aisles, all that sort of stuff. And when you get into the job, and this is the case with everyone pretty much, when you get into the job, the things you start liking are not the things that you did like before you got into it. That's across the board.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. So and obviously through my association with John Kenny, who I'm sure we'll get onto later, and my fondness for wrestling, British wrestling, Mount Evans wrestling.
Yeah.
I wanted to, and so did Jack, to reintroduce the style, and without wanting to sound patronising at all, to re-educate people.
Yeah, no, I don't think that sound patronising at all, because when I first came to my first session, I'd heard of World of Sport, I'd heard of the wrestling on a Saturday afternoon, but I had no idea. I literally, it didn't even cross my mind when I started to come, and the whole history that was behind that, which I had the joy of researching when I was doing my dissertation.
Yeah.
But
are you as annoyed as I am when people refer to it as World of Sport Wrestling?
You know what? I'm not as, because I think only because that's how it's become known as. But
it has, and that's the wrestling channels. None of the lads, I don't think, from that generation refer to it as World of Sport.
I'd have more of catch can style wrestling. But even then, that
was legit. That's Billy Robinson territory. Now you're talking the Billy Riley Snake Pit. But,
calling it the Mount Evans style, I was onto it straight away when you said that. That's
basically because, and I don't know if anyone is particularly familiar with this, but World of Sport was essentially ITV's version of Grandstand and ran from 1965 to 1985. British wrestling was on the television every Saturday from 1955 to 1988.
Yep.
It predated and outlasted World of Sport in a regular time slot on ITV, so it was on for 33 years. Now, a lot of people don't know that. The people that run ITV don't seem to know that either. But anyway, we'll get on to but these are but just to tie that into why this was important to me as well, a little bit of happenstance. I was obviously always watching wrestling at my nan and granddad's. Yeah. And they used to tell me, my bedtime stories weren't Robin Hood or all that. It was
Granddaddy and Giant Haystacks.
Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, Kendo Nagasaki, Mick McManus, Les Kellett, the fabulous Royal Brothers. And Mike Marino was my nan's favourite. She loved Mike Marino. God rest him. So they were my, granted, when my granddad would watch the Dudley Boys put someone through a table and go, oh, it's all kidology, this. It's not like it was in our day. And then subsequently, I've now seen Big Daddy versus Giant Haystacks from Wembley, 1981. Which is a different table bump altogether.
I like that reference. That's good.
I like. So we wanted to come back to what you actually asked me rather than me rabbiting on. It was about reintroducing the British style, which had it been, and it was still on Welsh television until 1996 under Rory Williams and Reslow, but everyone was just doing American wrestling with a British accent.
Yeah. When it comes to
which, if we go back to what we said at the very start of this interview, just sorry to cut you off, but the fact that you identified me as the general manager of Infinite Promotions,
absolutely.
I think you proved my point before I'd made it. So thank you very much for that.
How do you oblige? Something I'll come on to it. There was another point that kind of ties in, but as we were going into the American appropriation stuff, and as you said about your first experience and going watching Stone Cold the Theatre Royal in St Helens, there was something whilst I was interviewing people for my research paper. Something I found people were very disinterested or very disheartened in talking about was British wrestling in the 90s and early 2000s, because it was mostly all tribute shows.
Sort of towards the mid 90s, I would say so. I mean, they were always trying something. There is footage of, I think, Kendo Nagasaki versus Clive Myers in an American all-in disco ladder match.
That sounds spectacular.
Which is basically when the British. We'll get into without wanting Greg Dyke to sue me. We will get into later on.
Oh yes, we will.
How I think wrestling went off the television, and it isn't to do with it dropping in popularity for me, as many people say, and we will get into that. But promoters across the board were trying to diversify, and so you will see things creeping in to try and, as a USP. Now I remember being a kid and like they were doing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers stage shows and things like that. Do you know what I mean? They were trying to, and wrestling did exactly the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There are posters out there of the Red Ranger, and when Shadow got the boot from Gladiators, he was he was wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Everyone was looking for a USP, and when you think this is going back, this is before like Sky Digital TV. Do you know what I mean? Let alone the internet, the internet, or not the internet, but high-speed broadband, social media, YouTube, all this sort of, do you know what I mean? DVD, all this sort of stuff.
All that.
So, people would, and if kids would buy a ticket to see Stone Cold Steve Austin at the Theatre Royal, then that's as realistic to me as buying a ticket to seeing the Red Ranger from the Power Rangers. Do you know? So I think it was just people looking for a USP. Now, Brian Dixon, who is to this day the single most successful and best wrestling promoter this country has ever seen. He is the only difference between him and Vince.
Do you think that Brian Dixon doesn't get the respect he deserves in the modern wrestling community?
I think that Brian Dixon did exactly what it did to joint promotions and their monopoly, what Vince McMahon did to the National Wrestling Alliance. The only difference is there are many more million people in America, and so if Vince McMahon was to charge £10 a ticket in America, he would automatically make more money than Brian Dixon would make charging £10 a ticket in the UK. If roles were reversed, there'd be the All Star Network now. If Brian was interested, that's a big claim actually, because I don't think that would interest Brian in the slightest. But Brian Dixon, whilst it's crass to talk about money, Brian Dixon has had and may still have a 7-figure bank balance. So he. It's more now. Brian Dixon broke the joint promotions monopoly, which had been in place for decades. And he did it on his own.
Oh, there you go.
Well, as a promoter, he's obviously we exist on the hard work of the lads that work for us. But Brian Dixon broke the joint promotions monopoly.
Is the lot going back to what we talked about in the?
So just to finish on the tribute shows, what I was saying about Brian was that Brian basically had never been busier in the 6 to 8 years following it leaving TV,
right?
Because people missed it. The halls were never as full. He was doing really good business because people did miss it. But then once you get 10 years down the road, especially with the children, there are generations of children that have only ever seen, early 90s that will have only seen Bret Hart, Sid,
and so
Diesel. That era. So when you then offer him as good as if you offer them Tony Sinclair versus Steve Regal or whatever, do you know what I mean? There's not people are going to, well, who are they? Like, you know what I mean? Where's Brett? Where's and obviously Vince's business model was always big superhero-looking people.
Yeah.
Do you know? So, that American wrestling very quickly replaced Mark Evans wrestling in the audience's consciousness. But yeah, I know why a lot of the lads after World of Sport they don't like that period of time.
That was mostly when I interviewed. I was lucky and honoured to be able to go to the Wrestlers Reunion, courtesy of yourself, as part of the research. And the people I was interviewing were the likes of Johnny Saint, Johnny Kincaid, Marty Jones, Dave Taylor, just to name a few. And I think every single one of them, when I went to ask about that, somehow swerved it into talking about today's product instead of that time. So I can appreciate it. It's obviously it's a dark period in British wrestling history, but we've come into the light of what I think. Are we now in a silver? If the 80s were the golden age.
Well, the golden age, you were looking,
the
looking more the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, the 60s and 70s were the golden age. Are we now in a silver age of British wrestling?
All depends on what criteria you apply.
What do you mean by that?
In terms of talent, creativity, eyes on the products, yes, we are. In terms of the business side of things, I would say that we've got some way to go. And when I say we, I mean us as the domestic scene.
Yeah.
Certainly, I have got a long way to go, and that's no secret.
Yeah.
But from my position, or whatever position I have looking out, we still have a very long way to go.
Yeah.
In terms of, and it will not happen in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe longer.
Yeah. But have we got to maintain... Everyone is so concerned, I think, about the bubble bursting. That's a phrase that I hear used regularly.
I think because we've seen it too many times before, and I think that the disappointment after the World of Sports scenario...
Are we in, is this sort of...
Will be part of that.
This part of where we are now in British wrestling, with a number of companies doing fairly good business, are starting to move into bigger venues. Have we got to be careful how we... have promoters got to be more careful on how they approach growth anymore? Is it that people aren't taking enough risks or taking too many risks? Is everyone being quite careful given what's happened in the past?
No, I think, as I said early on, in terms of talent and creativity and eyes on the products, visibility, interest, all that sort of stuff, which is principally down to firms like, I suppose the first one to break out that kind of started the interest is ICW and their mainstream exposure through the BBC. Then you follow it up with the likes of Progress. I'm not going to get into all these different firms just because I will miss someone else. Yeah. And in this job, someone will be sticking pins in a voodoo doll of me half an hour after this. Yeah,
I know what you mean.
But in terms of, what ICW and Progress are doing at present is phenomenal. But there are two firms in, and you will know this more than me because you've done the research. How many firms were there when you did your research?
There is currently 117 promotions. That was as of, I'm going to say April this year. Okay. I'm more than confident. I'm very confident
so there are more now.
That has now grown. We're at least 120. Yeah. And to put that into perspective, I'm not sure if this got into my dissertation, so I'm going to say it anyway. Per square mile, that is more companies than the USA. Yeah. And when you even consider the size of the USA, that is an insane difference. Yeah. Personally, I just think that's nuts.
This is... And I have benefited from this in the fact that Infinite Promotions exists. But, when wrestling was in its peak, and you'll never get back to like what it was because there's so much more to do now. Do you know what I mean? There's EastEnders will never again retain an audience like Denmot serving Angie the divorce papers on Christmas Day. Which won't happen. And that's the same thing because everyone can, used to be there was one telly in the house. Now there's two tellies in every room if you count tablets and laptops and all that sort of stuff. But there are that many promotions that I am one of, and I have no more right to promote than anyone else does. Quite frankly, because nobody has a right to be a wrestling promoter. There is that is not in the the Human Rights Act.
Yeah.
But there's only so much business about it.
Yeah. This is I was going to ask you, do you think there are too many promotions? Not only in general, but in certain areas.
There aren't too many in the sense that are there too many for me? Are there too many for you? Are there too many? I would say and some of them are doing phenomenal business. Do you know what I mean? I have promotions very close to me that are doing far better business than I am at present. Do you know what I mean? And that's because they work very bloody hard. So excuse the language.
So we've actually said worse words than bloody on this. Do not worry about that.
They work hard to establish that. But like I say, if the time comes where I was a hindrance to the business, then I'd have to take a serious think about whether I carry on. But that's because, and that's not like in the next 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, I think we're providing something that no one else is at the minute, and whilst it is a struggle from time to time, I'm going to keep at it. But the business needs to go a long way. But the business isn't going to change unless a generation of workers and promoters are very selfless. And you can't. And I'm not saying that the lads now are selfish. It's just the fact of the matter is, there's only so many bumps on your bump card, and the lads have got to make as much money as they possibly can do in as short a time as possible to do this. Do you know what I mean? Whereas obviously, so for example, part of my work that I do is I'm an ad hoc mixed martial arts MC. Now their outlay for your average show on the same level relative is probably twice as much, at least, as what it is for wrestling.
Is that intake?
Yeah, in terms of what they get. But the profits are at least 3 times as much as, from the knowledge that I have of the two different things.
Yeah.
Obviously, boxing is still doing good business and all that stuff. But, I mean, I think back in the day when joint promotions was around, they were self-regulated.
Yeah.
So they started off as a cartel and later became incorporated, and they basically the reason they had a monopoly was because all these different firms in different areas kind of got together and said, right, we're a network now, the same way that the National Wrestling Alliance did.
Yeah.
And so look at both of those examples. Then one outlaw, or like Brian Dixon and Vince McMahon, whether people like it or not, were the first American and British indies. And they were the first indies to go big. Which is why I often have a problem when people criticise those two particular promoters. They were the first indies. And they broke that monopoly and then became the biggest deal in town. Yeah. And started their own monopoly to a certain point. That has waned now, of course, in this country. It's not because obviously Vince is a billionaire. But surely it must happen again. If we're going to get big.
Do you think they, on the whole, British wrestling needs some form of regulation? And if so, how would you go? In what sense regulate?
Well, it needs it can either be self-regulated, where people kind of are happy to have their little niche,
right?
But
where all promoters are all right, lads,
like Joint was.
let's sort this out.
Yeah.
Let's communicate if one of us has a problem with whatever.
Which is what happened in the past.
Yeah.
The only efforts made in my lifetime to try that in this country, though, were one man setting up lots of promotions and then saying that he regulated it.
Right. Okay.
Which is the reason why I'm glad that I didn't go to the FMA Academy.
Okay. That was a nice little tie-in.
Yeah, I'm very good at this. But which is inauthentic and is wrestling being created in one man's image.
Yeah, that's now.
I've never met this man, by the way, but and maybe he's just very good at working me. I'll tell you what, he is very good at working me, if he is. But wrestling in one man's image is not going to get the job done. And when I say about the business side of things, I'm not just talking from a promoter standpoint. The lads that are putting their lives essentially on the line. If they've got their own insurance, great, but there's no pension.
No.
You know what I mean? And don't get things come with that. If you want the rewards of doing things properly, you also have to take the responsibility of doing things properly, which I won't get into. But so whether it's regulation from central government in the same way that you have to pay £10,000 for a boxing license, for a boxing promoter's license a year, or deposit on top of your fees, who's going to volunteer to do that? But I tell you what, if we want business
to go back to the way it was.
Well, not to go back to where it was, to get better.
Just to get better.
Yeah, then that's what we're going to need.
Okay, so we've just had a little bit of a break, restocked up on the tea.
I think you needed a breather.
I did. I think a little bit. So where we leave off on the regulation of British wrestling.
Yeah, I mean,
if it was needed.
The thing is, the only other thing is for people to start actively targeting one another, but that just doesn't go down well.
Do you ever think? I know it's actively targeting people's fine, but do you think we're far off from one promotion buying out another purely for survival?
I don't know the business models of the issue. I don't. I could probably find it out. Could be companies' house and what have you, but I mean. What is there to buy? I mean, there's intellectual property, fair enough, and back catalogue, but everyone works for everybody.
Yeah, there's not so much talent. And it's not even territory. It's not even defined.
No, and the thing with that is that in terms of trying to obviously you can't bring back the glory days of, of kayfabe. I actually loathe using the word now because. I don't like talking about it. But
it's a sad subject.
Yeah. But at present, I've certainly suffered with two people being bitter enemies.
Yeah.
For me, coming up to a big feud ender and then winning tag titles together the next week, 40 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So in terms of trying to recapture kind of like a unique product, do you know what I mean? But again, because the lads, quite rightly so, there is no kind of restriction on or responsibility for them to be selfless and only be booked one way. Because if the lad's offering them money, if he's paying them, or a lad or a lady are paying them money to be the other, then you fill your boots. Because until the day, so I can't turn around as a promoter, not as me now with Ciarán McConnell Infinite Promotions, but if a promoter can't go to someone and say, you can't until they're paying them a living wage. Yeah, they can go and they can ask. Because that's honest, and I know that's something that's come up lately. Which no qualms with. You can ask someone not to do something, whether they decide to take you up on that.
That's true. Without naming names, because I know which scenario you're talking to. What was your whole take on? To put it in layman's terms, there was a company that were starting up in the Northwest, and another company who'd been going for
this is crippling. It's GPW and
but GPW and This Is Wrestling.
Yeah.
They've been and GPW owners, I think Johnny Brannigan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Turned around and said to his workers, You'll never work in Wigan again if you work for this company. Something. I think that was.
So they his words.
They were.
I can't imagine they were Johnny's words.
It was something along those lines.
I think he will have said that I will not book you if you work for them.
That's more likely.
Yeah.
But the word blackball was used.
Yeah. By him or by people recounting the situation?
It was used on the conversation thread that I read.
Okay.
Can't remember who it was used by.
Okay. Would I do it? No. Am I in a position to do it? No. So I can't tell you what I'd do if I was in a position to do it. Because, but I have no qualms with Johnny protecting his business interest.
No, that's
which isn't a popular view.
It's understandable. I mean,
know that.
At the end of the day, I believe it was done to protect the audience because it was the This Is Wrestling show was done something like 0.5 miles away from where GPW run their shows. Mm-hmm. So it was done in the same way that it was encroaching on the target audience.
Yeah. And you can't,
which is somewhat understandable.
You can't. Yeah, somewhat understandable.
Well,
I'd say
yes.
For me, it is entirely understandable. And whilst I'm not saying that I would act the same way, do the same thing. If Johnny's dedicated a portion of his life to something, and then someone that's come in very very close, stone's throw away from where he's working, wanting to use his lads, and I work around that area, and I'll say in a socially deprived area where disposable income is not prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work at, just for those that you don't know, I'm a learning support assistant at the minute. I work just outside Leigh, sort of half. Basically, probably the midpoint. Probably the demilitarised zone between. I'm working in the DMZ between Hindley and Leigh.
Yeah.
And I got no quarrel with Johnny Brannigan for saying that if you work for this person, you can't work for me.
Yeah.
Or not not making people cheat. It's not like
Yeah, it's not exactly.
It's either me or the dog. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's okay. Johnny thought that the best, and me and Johnny aren't. When I say this, I don't mean enemies. But me and Johnny aren't friends. I've seen Johnny for years, but he's always been very good to me.
Yeah,
and sarcastic bastard, but he's always been very good to me, and he's for me. Well, again, no one has a right to do these things.
But he is.
But he isn't. He isn't the bad guy for saying. Yeah. If we're giving the lads a straight up choice to say, well, if you work this show, you will not be on my bill anymore. That's business.
Yeah,
it's the wrestling business, not the wrestling friendship. You know what I mean? It's and on the other side of things, obviously, there is nothing to stop to stop Drill from promoting.
Yeah,
wherever he wants to promote. There are enough lads about. But then you get into that sort of you can't be outwardly, you can't outwardly disagree with anyone anymore. Do you know? Do you know what I mean? Keep it to yourself. But it shouldn't have been plastered all over social media or anything like that. It's just, keep the job in house.
It could have been, I
but again, if
but do you think
we've had it here? We've just had just outside the gym, a Pizza Hut has just opened.
Yeah.
50 yards down the road, there is a Domino's. On the day of Pizza Hut's grand opening, Domino's sent lads out with placards doing a special offer at Domino's because they are two pizza places within a stone's throw of one another.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
okay, nothing.
It was like a Corbin rally. Just people with placards and all kinds. Do you know what I mean? So. Yeah, on that situation, and it's not, it's none of my business. But if you're asking me, which you have, I would, I would advise people not to be painting Johnny as a villain.
No,
because there isn't a villain in this scenario. For making a decision, sticking by his guns, and saying, for the good of the thing that I've worked very hard to grow for over a decade, I think this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking sides, but I'm not taking the side of the
any. Well,
I'm not taking sides at all.
One thing you touched on there, which we touched on a little bit in one of our A Few Good Marks podcasts, was what impact and what difference has social media made to the wrestling business?
Probably the same difference that it's made to the world at large. In that, people justify everything they do off the opinions of the people who've got on their Facebook. Wrestling's very interesting, actually, in the sense that it seems in the last 20 years to be preempting everything that goes on in the wider world. So, like, people, like the whole Cena thing, people ragging on Cena for, do you know what I mean, for doing things properly, going to the gym, working out, and, do you know what I mean? Alright, fair enough, you'll never see him do certain things. But I absolutely love. I must say I absolutely love the fact that people hate John Cena. Do you know what I mean? Like 500 sick and dying kids have asked to see him before they die. How do you hate that? Do you know what I mean? All right, fair enough. He might not have the smoothest wrist lock reversal, but that's and Roman Reigns as well. It's not his fault. Is someone's seen something in him that they want to? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People being put in positions to kind of carry the firm, like it's not a new thing. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, right, the world's moving and there's a space for everyone. Do you know what I mean? But people don't seem to be able. Social media makes people it's just a way of feeling vindicated and thinking that their opinions are correct. When in fact the very nature of an opinion is that there isn't a correct.
Yeah, there isn't a correct.
I don't get me wrong. I have preferences. There are things that I like in the job, and and there are beliefs. This is outside wrestling, but beliefs that I have that I hold to be ardently, objectively correct that people would disagree with me on, and that's a different thing altogether. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? This whole idea of everyone's entitled to an opinion. Actually, do you know everyone's got a right to their opinion? No, you don't. No, everyone's got a right in a democratic society to express their opinion, but that does not carry with it the automatic
correctness of that opinion.
I do not have to vindicate your opinion just because you hold it. You don't have to vindicate my opinion just because I hold it. So this idea that and opinions are obviously, the credibility of an opinion is based on certain levels of experience, background, knowledge, and all kinds of other criteria. That just because you have an opinion does not mean that it is in any way, shape, or form valid. And what you use to back that opinion up is everyone has a right to an opinion. No, they don't. And that's my opinion.
Genius.
Yeah, so I'm Jim Cornette. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So I'm going to swerve off the... is that all we've got to say on British, on the current state of British professional wrestling?
Don't get me wrong, it's like, if ever I sound negative about things, I'm not. I'm hypercritical because there is so much more. Do you know?
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
Are lads at work.
I think there's
when I'm in there giving feedback on matches for the lads in the gym, for example, they could have done 99% of things right. That doesn't mean I'm not going to tell them about the 1%. Because if they get that better, that's 100%. You know what I mean? That's just maths.
Yeah.
Scott Steiner, I think knows that. Do you know what I mean? Like
33 to 30%. Yeah. So, absolutely.
But no, the vast majority of things from a fan's perspective, couldn't be better.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? In terms of a sustainability perspective, we have to work harder. I have my role to play in this. We have to work harder on sustainability. And I don't think, if anyone wants to argue that point, feel free. Come see me.
Okay. So just to round off, I want to ask you a couple of. I believe.
Round off. Are we finished? I've got 2 hours in me, brother.
You can probably go. I've got 3.
Let's do part 2. Shall we? Let's have the third ever episode be part 2 of me. Let's do that.
So there's just 3 3 favourite things. First of all, is who has been, when you were wrestling, your favourite opponent? Actually, I'm going to make it 4 because I've just thought of another one.
Favourite opponent for the...
Your favourite ever opponent?
As in terms of for the match itself?
Yes.
Okay. Because I once had a tag match against Nixon Newell and she's dreaming. But no, so she would probably be fit. No, see, my favourite opponent... Really
now you wish I'd told you these questions beforehand.
Well, no. Do you know what? I've wrestled James Mason, which is, you know what I mean. I'm not saying I couldn't. I had no business being in the ring then. But the sheer fact alone that I've wrestled James Mason, it was a tag job. Me and Bangor Walsh's lad Darren against Joel Redmond and James Mason. But I've locked up with James Mason.
Yeah,
I can. You know, as much of a punter as I may be for this statement, I've been in the ring with James Mason.
Fair play.
So, you know, fight me.
So that's interesting. You say that was in a tag team scenario. So, who has been your favourite tag team partner?
Keith Myatt, all day long.
Excellent.
Keith Myatt is just, you know, I can't promise we were ever any good, but bloody hell, they were loud when we were wrestling. We made him laugh. We made him scream. Me and Keith Myatt, I tell you what, I'm older in my head than he is. Do you know what I mean? We tagged that match I had with Steph and Anna Pat. Me and Keith wrestled in drag against those two. We, you know, like it's just a dream to be around. It's just you know when you just having fun doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean Keith Myatt all day long. I had to remember everything to take all the bumps, and Keith will admit that. You know, but my God, me and Keith Myatt as a tag team. Yeah, I tell you what, I'd put the tights back on tomorrow to tag with Keith. I tell you what.
Excellent. So James Mason, would you say that was okay? Your favourite match? This could either be. I'm gonna broaden this for this next 2 because this could either be your favourite match you've either been in or that you've promoted.
That you yourself promoted.
Yeah, that you yourself. You can answer for both of them if you want.
Promoted it's got to be CJ Banks versus Gypsy John Kenny.
Yeah.
With 3 days' notice. I didn't promote it. I just
it just happened. On. It just happened.
Yeah, Juice's opponent had pulled out. The only person it made sense for him to fight was 69-year-old retired John Kenny.
Excellent.
Who, when I asked him on the Wednesday, I said to him, John, I had Juice and John were both here. They were upstairs in our old premises, and I knew going in it was going to be a big ask. And I walked in. I took him into my office at the time, and I said, because I love an office, the only reason I'm in the door. And I said, he's pulled out. I need, and not John. No, he's pulled out. I need the only person it makes sense for you to wrestle Juice is John. Can you do it? And John went, on Saturday. All right.
That casual.
Are you all right with that, Juice? And he went, yeah. And that's that. And John Kenny walked out to "We Shall Not Be Moved" in his tassels for days gone by, and put on 15 minutes with the man who is pound for pound the best professional wrestler in the country. I put Juice in there with anyone, and between them, I mean, as much as I hate Popular Chance, to see John, who was 69 at the time, hadn't wrestled he packed in when he was 53.
Right.
He'd had one match, I think, since that against Sam Adonis at Butlins, maybe a year before. So to wrestle his second match in 16 years at the age of 69 against CJ Banks, in front, someone who will burn for this, knocked the camera over, so there is no footage.
Oh, that is heartbreaking.
You're telling me?
Oh,
but I was there, and I can tell you that 200-300 people we're sitting there chanting, "You've still got it," at John Kenny, and what's more, he won by DQ.
Excellent.
So I would go for, in terms of that I've promoted that one. Match I've had. Oh well, match I've had, we've done. If James Mason's my favourite opponent, then that's got to be the favourite. Well, I mean, I had some decent tag jobs, like some fun tag jobs as well along the way, which were stellar.
Yeah,
I mean, but
this one is most definitely for the promotion side of things. Your favourite ever show
that I've promoted?
Yeah.
Oh, God. The first. Oh, what was it? God. The first. The night Danny won the belt. The first time.
Oh.
He broke Juice's 896 day reign as champ. And it was authentic. It was, the hoist, and I was involved in the finish. That's not why it was my favourite, but everything tied together. We'd been telling a story for a long time about Juice cheating and disrespecting the firm and the fans and the title.
I was on camera for that.
And just taking every little low route out and all that sort of stuff, and just being an obnoxious. Juice when Juice was champ. The show after that, I think. Juice upset the crowd so much that an elderly grandfather bypassed security, walked up on the stage, tried to Superman punch Juice off the stage. He jumped from the stage to the apron of the ring with a fucking flying dig at Juice. That's how good Juice is at authentic villainy and being able to actually work it. And do you know what? If he wanted them to cheer him, give him half an hour, he'd have him. Yeah. And that's how good the man is. And but that whole scenario with Danny winning, that was just a payoff from a long plan.
Yeah.
Sure, purely off the base, I couldn't even tell you the undercard because that, but that,
just for that.
It was good.
I have to testify for that because I was on camera for that, and I could just feel the emotion on camera, and even as trying to still do the job I was doing to the best of my ability. But I was still part of it. I was still, behind the camera trying to keep it still, but still giving into every little.
The only thing that comes close is Juice returning after the steel cage job.
Yes.
After the steel cage job with when Joey had won the belt, and then Juice came in and cashed in, because a regular fan, and I never do this, but a regular fan was having to duck out. He was trying to beat the traffic. He was trying to beat people leaving. And he was on his way out just as Joey had won the belt. Yeah. And I went, "You're leaving?" And he went, "I was finished on it." I said, I just raised my eyebrows. And he turned, and this is like a 37-year-old. Do you know what I mean? He's brought his lad. He was trying to duck out with his lad. And he turned around before the sun did and shot back in. And then saw me again 20 minutes later and went, "Kieran, thank you for stopping me." So, that's the other thing that comes close. But that first night when the people authentically, and you can tell it's authentic because you see the look on Danny's face when they did it. But when the audience lifted him onto their shoulders and paraded him round while Juice is looking distraught and having a pop at me and all that sort of stuff, and he finally, he got his comeuppance. That's got to be, because the thing I loved most about wrestling as a fan was moments. Yeah. So, as good as Rock Austin WrestleMania 17 was, it's not. I used to pop for Austin saving Stephanie McMahon from the Black Wedding, and I was post beer truck, so I hadn't seen that up until later on. Do you know what I mean? But all that sort of stuff, like the moments, were what did it for me. Yeah, and that as a moment just eclipses pretty much everything else. Yeah.
Solid last answers. So just to I know I said just to round off.
As if all the other answers have
just to round off. Yeah, well, they all have been.
I never did get into why Greg Dyke took wrestling off.
Oh, that's to come.
That's episode 2.
It's episode 2. We'll do that in the near future. But so you mentioned with the when Juice and John upstairs. So just talk us through the evolution of the Infinite Promotions training gym, which we are currently sat in, the most recent carnation of.
So
this is your chance to plug the score.
Really I know that. Yeah, I know, but I've got to do it right. I could just tell you the address. But no, the address will be found probably somewhere on the Marking Out website. Mm-hmm. Sorry, no, Official Wrestling, isn't it?
Official Wrestling.
Is through. I do apologise.
It's all right.
So the Infinite Promotions Wrestling Gym, basically, an opportunity arose to start teaching people to wrestle because someone we knew had a ring, and we knew someone who had space for said ring. Mm-hmm. It didn't turn out well in its first incarnation, for reasons I won't go into.
My back, for one.
Yeah, well, that, yeah, and one of many reasons why I'm now a sole trader. The idea was to train people and try and get regular income stream through, and also to try and we were doing the British League at the time, the Mount Evans rules. So we thought it was a good idea if the new people coming in, we could. Sorry, I'm banging my pen on the table and Kieran's telling me off. If we could actually instruct people from scratch on the style. As best we knew it, and obviously we had help from John Kenny and others along the way in some form or capacity or the other. We did that in an ex-tattoo studio on the first floor of a terraced block of buildings in St Helens with Hammer, our great friends in the mixed martial arts world. Who are now in the same building as us, but we then went with them to their premises upstairs, and basically we're given a squash course. The room, which was luxury in terms of room compared to what we've been dealing with before, at high ceilings and everything. And subsequently to that, as they began to expand, when they needed space and what have you, so they helped us they helped us to take over the downstairs of the building, which hadn't been used for 6 years prior to us taking over. So we've been here now around 16, 17 months. And basically we're open 5 nights a week and Saturday afternoons. The idea being that you get pretty much every aspect of the job in here, from different standpoints. So John Kenny is our de facto head trainer. He started wrestling when he was something like 23. Obviously his last match was when he was 69, so he's been in and around the job for decades. He's seen the big boom period, he's seen the the decline and then the subsequent boom again. He had a massive influence on Rob Brookside early doors in the job, to the point where Rob Brookside calls him dad when he sees him.
Wow.
And Rob Brookside is of course the principal, the first training you meet when you go to the performance centre. You spend 3 weeks with Rob Brookside, and obviously John through that knows people the likes of Dave Taylor, Steve Regal, or William Regal, Dave Finlay, all those kinds of people. Obviously now, and this tells you everything you need to know about the British style of wrestling, is that a good 4 or 5 people in very prominent positions in the developmental team at WWE are all British bred, well, UK bred. Let's not get into Dave Finlay and whether he's British or not. So John teaches the lads, the way things work. Everyone used to come over here to learn to wrestle. Everyone for the main event on the Wembley show with Big Daddy and Giant Ice Tax, they weren't the last match on. The last match was Wayne Bridges against a guy called Jim Harris, who went on to become Kamala. So Kamala was here. The Hart brothers were here. There's a picture on the wall of John Kenny fish hooking Jushin Liger before he wore a mask. 18-year-old Jushin Liger. Wow. On the wall, John Kenny is knocking 7 bells out of him. Everyone came through Britain to learn to do the job. Or they had influences. My favourite wrestler of all time is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. He puts a wrist lock on like a British wrestler because Billy Robinson was Vern Gagne's assistant coach in the AWA. Billy Robinson, obviously famous in the catch world, the mixed martial arts world, and the wrestling world, and most recently, of course, having an influence on Jack Gallagher in the WWE. But he trained everyone from the Iron Sheik to Sergeant Slaughter to Billy Robinson was a British guy, knew how to do the job, and of course he also trained Johnny Saint, among others. And then Danny Hope, the kingpin of Infinite Promotions, the number one. Danny is his gimmick is phenomenal. The things he can do in the ring, you wouldn't believe, because he doesn't have to do them because his gimmick is so good. People occasionally lay criticism at Danny for being all gimmick. He is not all gimmick. That man could go. He just knows how to work people. Dean McManus, a lad that I've been friends with now for years, through first training together. Dean is not he's not a name in the sense that he gets lots of plaudits on the computer, on the internet, on that face tube. He's not, but Dean, I can put Dean on with anyone at any time for any reason. And Dean will get.
I have to say that Dean is one of my favourite workers in the UK right now.
And Dean
it's just a shame that he's not out there as much as he deserves
to
be. I assume it's his own choice.
Dean's quite happy to go around and work for everyone. You know what I mean? Work here, there, and everywhere, and get a good reaction out of people, whether there's 500 in or 5 in. Do you know what I mean? Both of which I think have happened. And I know I can put Dean. If I there are a few people that I can honestly say that I could put in there with everyone that I've got experience of. Do you know what I mean? And they are names like CJ Banks, Danny Hope, Rampage Brown, James Mason, and Dean is in there as well. And that isn't something I say lightly, but I know I can put Dean in there with anyone, and Dean will do the best, whether it's being in there with someone that's been out 20 years or 2 months.
And that reflects,
Dean will do well,
and that obviously reflects in his training as well.
And Dean's worked hard, and he started when he was younger than I was when I started, and Dean is. Dean's got an incredible mind for actual instruction and actually teaching people. And then, of course, you'll see me as well. Anyone, ask people that know me. My bag is obviously mat wrestling and body mechanics and how things actually work, because I think that's important, because at the end of the day, in the mainstream, what we are doing should look like a credible fight. Because that is what... in my opinion, that is what wrestling is. Do you know what I mean? Wrestling and genres can diverge and subvert and split and change, but in the same way, if Coronation Street now looks nothing like it did when it first came out. Ken Barlow sitting in his front parlour having his tea, being told he can't get pictures. Do you know what I mean? How many serial killers and explosions and car crashes they have had on that street over the years? Surprising anyone lives there. Do you know what I mean? Yet, if Steve McDonald wants to go to Freshco to do his shopping, he drives there. He doesn't put his jetpack on and fly there, because people in the city of Manchester do not have jetpacks. Do you know what I mean? An alien does not land in Coronation because that is science fiction. Do you know what I mean? That is it's not a soap.
I get what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? Things can move on and change, but in my view, the bread and butter, your base of what you do should be that this is an athletic competition in combat sports, with the winner wanting to win so that he can move up through the rankings, command more money on the fight purse, and personal problems creep in, but they should be the special bits rather than, because if, with the greatest will in the world, if I was a wrestler and you were a wrestler and we had a personal beef all the time, I wouldn't be sorting it with you in the ring. Do you know what I mean? If it was getting like, do you know what I mean? These are things that creep in, and we use the medium of wrestling to deal with these. We use this simulated combat as our medium to tell the story. But part of the framework of that, do you know what I mean? The wrestling's equivalent of the unities. Do you know what I mean? Essentially, the pretense that this is, and not that you've got to go home and believe it. Do you know what I mean? Because again, Steve McDonald is not a real person. But for the time you're watching it, you've got to suspend your disbelief. Do you know what I mean?
And you can learn all about that at the Infinite Promotions Training Gym, which can be found at
20 Duke Street, St Helens, the corner of Duke Street, North Road, to be precise, opposite the old YM building.
If they're done.
it's absolute bang centre of town. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Infinite Promotions, and all the details are there.
Hopefully the new website should be up as well, so we'll throw a link in the description as well.
Yeah, I've got to get on to me, man.
Should tell him, yeah. Never mind. Well, Kieran, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
Had a great talk. Part 2.
We'll
have to sort part.
Oh, you want to do it?
Oh, we'll have to sort part 2 out sometime soon.
You want to do it?
We'll have to sort it out sometime soon.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, we might do it. Maybe have to wait a year just to like build suspense.
Oh yeah.
Build it up.
You're on part 12 by then.
It won't be that long. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Tatty buys.
Ciara.